Welcome to A Brief Pause, a dog podcast where we cover a variety of dog-related topics. Today, we're going to be having Ani Grossman on. This will be part of a two-part series. Ani Grossman is a certified dog trainer and the owner of School for the Dogs in Manhattan's East Village. She's also a podcaster, a journalist, and the author of How to Train Your Dog with Love and Science. We're here to talk about the exciting new book, How to Train Your Dog with Love and Science. I had so much fun reading this. Um, what a great writer you
Oh,
are.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
I'm so excited for in the future to be able to use this as a resource with my clients. Sometimes I don't always have the time or the words, and it's so amazing to have material like this out there that I can quickly reference for them and say, read this, or, hopefully even after this, listen to this podcast episode, call up Ani Grossman or one of her amazing trainers at School for the Dogs. Such a great resource. And what a good pairing with the other episode that we are doing for this season. And it's all about dogs and science. And we're at this new place in animal care, hopefully, where we're starting to listen to the data and we get more and more data every day where we can actually stop guessing as much as we are knowing. But you had an amazing career before you started School for the Dogs and training. Can we start there? Can we talk about your career leading up to this?
Yeah, sure. I was a full-time journalist for many years. I was on staff at the New York Observer and the New York Post, and then I was freelance, writing a lot of like lifestyle articles. I did a lot of wrote like a lot of wedding announcements, like very in-depth wedding announcements, and some stuff about tech, and relationships, and kind of like whatever-ish. And I I loved reporting and I loved writing, but I kind of just I couldn't figure out how to like keep going as like doing it professionally, which is with all the changes in the world. And was kind of just trying to like figure out what else could I do with my life?
Yeah, and you've got a
Um,
podcast too. Before I forget, you also
yeah,
have your own podcast for School for the Dogs, right?
It's now called How to Train Your Dog with Love and Science. It's the same as the book, but it's also AKA School for the Dogs podcast. Um, yeah, anyway, I kind of had this idea of like dog training. That sounds like a fun thing to do in my head for a long time. And and sort of on a whim, like signed up for Karen Pryor Academy, which is a professional program. And I went in like I went in knowing nothing, like just like complete. Like if they had told me like I mean I don't know, but if they had told me like here's a whip, here's like I don't know, get a correction spray, go at it, I really had no idea what I was signing up for. I just was like, show me how to make money training dogs. But what I found was that it kind of blew my mind. And I got incredibly interested um, with helping dogs, but more than that, like helping other people just sort of see like how fascinating animal behavior is and how lucky we are to have these like science experiments in our homes that we can experiment using uh, technologies rooted in positive reinforcement, rooted in the science of behavior, and in doing so, like understand the science of behavior better, which is a science that you can't escape, just like you can't escape physics. But most of us don't know even like the very basics about the science of behavior. And for me, learning how to train dogs was a lesson in operant conditioning, classical conditioning, um, really important sort of I think basic stuff that we should all know about, but that is somehow overlooked in most people's basic education. And So yeah, I think I don't know what was the
Well,
question again?
well, I was just asking you how your journey led from your previous career and what your previous career was, but you actually talk a lot about being inspired when you were young. Or at least you acknowledged what we knew about things like training when we were young and what we, because you made me reminisce a lot about what we were exposed to as far as like the dog trainers on TV back then, and even some of our own parents or people we knew how we would train dogs back then, and yeah, how different
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
is
mean,
once you
I
start
tried
learning
to
some stuff.
um I mean, I didn't really set out to write a memoir. And but it's I would say it's maybe memoir adjacent. There's a lot about my own life in it, and I think I think my story is not unlike many people's story of like this is how I learned to train dogs. This is how I thought about dog training, if I ever thought about dog training. Like I to me like I don't know, dog training was something you did if you had a dog with a problem or maybe if you had a puppy, but it seems sort of like superfluous, like not something worth very much time and thought.
Yeah, it
Um,
was a lot more about how do you make the pet in your home obedient, if I can put it into those words. That's what I remember about learning about training growing up, and you really described that well about what we
and
were exposed to.
yeah, obedient, but also just like just not considering a dog's eye view, which I think is still, you know, like how most people operate. Like, unfortunately, I don't think dog training has been an incredibly progressive field. And I mean, and I still think it's kind of considered odd or other when you think about the cause of the dog's stress. Like just the other day, my mother-in-law, who is like just like the kindest, most thoughtful, like loving person, um, gentle, like she's a psychologist. She is like the most if someone's going to think about like your feelings and needs, it's going to be her. And the other day she was over and we had a new sofa actually being delivered. And so the guys were in the hallway delivering the sofa, and I sent my daughter to I put Poppy in her crate because it's my dog. Like I didn't want her, I just like couldn't deal with her in that moment, and like I needed her to not be there. But I sent my daughter over with like a mug full of shredded mozzarella cheese, and I was like, just go give this to her while while this is happening. Like it's the best I can do right this moment. It's really she gets stressed when people come into my apartment, and it's just always like a lot to deal with, especially it's a lot to deal with like the way I want to deal with it. um and I don't set aside enough time in my life for like practice sessions because like it's the reality. So my practice sessions are like real life sessions. But I'm always trying to like help her just feel better about people in the hallway however I can. And my mother-in-law was like, oh, that was a good idea to give her cheese so that she would stop barking at the guys in the hallway. And I was like, well, I didn't give it to her to make her stop barking. I gave it to her because I want her to feel better about those guys being in the hallway. And and my mother-in-law was like, oh, you weren't worried about how the guys in the hallway were going to feel about being barked at? And I was like, not really. Like I figure they could handle it, but I'm not really worried about like their emotional state, and I can explain to them like, hey, I'm sorry my dog is barking. I'm worried about my dog being stressed out about this situation that like, you know, I can't shield her from right now. And my like it blew my mother-in-law's mind. She was like, I never thought that I would never have thought about that. Like I feel like I would learn something new about you and how you and
Well, and that's the thing, like being empathetic to your dog's emotions is going to get you a lot farther in speaking their language. And I think, I just meant when you talk about, when I said that trainers back in the day that we saw always seem like the whole goal was to get your pet obedient, was sort of like just to get this animal to be obedient when I tell it to do stuff. But
Right.
w with that comes a total lack of like this being has feelings, and then you might want to be empathetic to their feelings, even though at the same time, um, we always have loved to anthropomorphize
Right. It's
our
so confusing. It's like,
pets.
is this supposed to be my best friend, or is it like, some kind of wolf creature trying to take over and dominate me in my household? Like,
Yeah.
hold
And
on.
so you talked about some, and there's been amazing research in the past. We've always had to start somewhere. And there's been, trainers in the past that have been really impressive. So I don't want to knock all of them. But you do have some choice words for Caesar Milan that I feel like we should go through, because I think this is someone who still comes up constantly. And a lot of people, if you're not sort of in the pet industry, are completely clueless as to why he may be controversial or why his techniques may be controversial. And some of the concepts like the alpha and dominant and those things like that that are still used so much today, especially by someone like Andrew Tate. But it's like, can you explain why uh, a lot of trainers, modern trainers, and especially trainers that are using techniques like yourself and are rooted more in this science and behavior forward methods, are, struggle with Caesar Milan and what and the theory of alpha and dominance and things like that. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, I mean, I when I first heard about Caesar Milan, like I didn't think twice about it. I'm like, oh, clearly the guy is a clearly the guy is a genius expert. He's telling us he's a genius expert and he's on National Geographic. I mean, like that seems pretty genius experty to me. Like it had all the makings of it. And I think he he has a kind of like underdog appeal, I would say. The illegal immigrant from Mexico, who made good when, and made what did he make good doing? Like telling Hollywood types that like that their dog's issues are like because of them and their issues. And I think it's a model that like works really well on reality TV. It's never just the kitchen remodel. It's like, what is the deeper level? Um, Unfortunately, it involved dogs somewhere in this transformation that was happening with these people. And in the in between, like in the, here's the problem and here's the solution, was, this great like new age kind of like, I need to learn to accept myself and reach out to others, or whatever like the little lesson is. And I think training being presented in that way makes it seem like really complicated, something that is like truly enigmatic, something you need to be born understanding. And um, that some people have special abilities with, and that it's really like a life mission to becoming a more sane and calm and assertive person that will bring you dog salvation, basically. And in the book, I talk about how he when he finally comes around to explaining uh how to actually be calm, assertive, or fill yourself with love, joy, and happiness, or he has all these little like things that he says. um it, when he finally breaks it down, and I really like tried to read deep into Caesar Milan, and he has lots of books, lots of TV shows. I'm like, where does he actually explain how to achieve this like higher level of humanness? he says stuff like emulate Cleopatra, pretend you're Oprah, read read you know the work of Phil McGraw, and also do practice Stanislavski and Lee Strasberg style acting. Uh, learn judo, meditate, and and again, I think former me, if I had gone that deeply into it, would have thought like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But dog training vocational school was a revelation to me because it made me realize, oh, like there are actually like laws of behavior. There's actually like laws of learning. There's actually great research that's been done, and not great like as in like good, yay, like much research that's been done by many people with PhDs at the finest institutions on uh, how to teach effectively, how to teach animals effectively. And in this case, the animal is a dog. But this work, the work of trying to figure out how to teach with as little pain, punishment, difficulty as possible is not something that just touches dogs, of course. This and I think we should all always be working towards the goal of operating in our environments with using as little force, punishment, and coercion as possible, because it doesn't lead to good places. I mean, I think a lot of the problems in our world today are because of how effective force, punishment, and coercion can be in the short term, but like it leads to not good things, um, sometimes down the line, and it leads to unpredictable, not good things. Whereas when we're trying to train a dog or a chicken or whatever, whoever, with methods that are rooted in rewards, we can screw up a lot more with a lot less of the fallout.
I'm really glad that you break down in your book, play by play, what is wrong with the Caesar Milan techniques, like, or you at least you break down what it may appear to the viewer is going on and appear to be obedience and submission, or whatever someone sees as a positive result. Uh, and what's actually happening in the dog's
Yeah.
behavior. That's really,
Yeah.
really important. And
I
again, it's
used the
about like,
episode.
yeah,
Yeah, I used the episode, the Holly episode, uh, which I think is on YouTube. It's called like Caesar's worst bite. If you want to look at the clip from the episode. Um, and I knew I wanted to kind of go deep into an episode. Um, I picked that one's kind of at random. Um, and while I was writing the section on body language, I was like, oh, I think this is where this fits in because I mean, there's so much that you could, I mean, I could write a whole book on that episode. Um, uh, but for me, I felt like I, I, like many dog trainers, can't watch Caesar Milan without feeling really stressed out because I see the signs of stress in the dog that Caesar Milan himself does not seem to notice ever. So
it's
I
weird.
used it to write about body language and discomfort, by kind of talking about what I see in the episode versus what Caesar Milan says is going on and that people believe is going on. But you don't need to get a master's degree to understand a little bit of dog body language, as I'm sure you know as a groomer. That doesn't mean that we perfectly understand them every moment. They're not like literally talking to us, with nouns and verbs and punctuation, but they're pretty good at communicating to us. And I think like a 10-minute education in body language could probably be transformative to most dog owners and keep people from getting bitten in the face. Like, what more incentive is there to to learn a little bit about dog body language than that? Because it happens all the time.
Yeah, I believe the story goes that he started as a groomer, and I think I remember seeing one episode a long time ago where there was like I preface by saying I haven't watched him extensively. I definitely haven't read any of the books or anything like that. And I also, when he first came around, knew nothing about training and was like, wow, this seems like someone who knows what they're doing. And he seems like a really nice guy. Like that was, what I knew. And so that I was definitely romanced into watching episodes, of course, because I already had an affinity for wanting to learn what was going on with animals and stuff like that, but didn't,
Yeah.
I was still sitting on the living room floor at my parents' house at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so but I saw this episode where there was like a Maltese that couldn't get its face groomed, and he's like, I was a groomer, let me come and do it. And it was like, the submission techniques or whatever you want to call that. And
Yeah, no, I don't think he started out as a groomer. He started out working as at a dog daycare,
okay.
and then went on to do dog walking. But I mean, I'm not surprised that he would say that he did
Well, and maybe it's a
maybe
false
at some point he
memory.
did. Maybe at some point he
Yeah,
did.
I don't
Um,
know, but I just
the other thing is
remember
like dog training is a completely unregulated field.
as is
There
grooming.
is that true? I don't
Yeah.
know about grooming.
Yeah.
You don't need any specific license to call yourself a groomer.
Not on a city, state, or federal level last time I checked.
Wow. Wow.
So that's one of the biggest things I try to tell my clients that like the very first thing I want everyone to know is just that, because I think it definitely changes people's mindset on it because you do go in assuming that there's some baseline of education in something like that, and there's absolutely not at all.
Yeah, God, it's so
Um,
crazy. It's
there's
so crazy.
no requirement or baseline on it at all. You could come in
You
off the
you
street.
can't trim someone's sideburns without without a
Yeah.
license.
Be sure to check out the second half of my conversation with Ani Grossman and check out all the episodes on all major platforms, including YouTube. Till next time.